Welcome everyone to our BC Refugee Hub hosted webinar, Introduction to the BC Safe Haven Program and Safe Haven Resource Network. So I would like to start by acknowledging the land. I'm joining you from the unceded traditional territory of the Coquitlam First Nation, which lies within the shared territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Katzie, Musqueam, Cookite, Squamish, and Stolo nations. It's important for me to acknowledge the lands that I'm privileged to live, work, and raise my children on as a way of showing respect and honoring the Indigenous peoples of these lands. Acknowledgement for me is a way of resisting the erasure of Indigenous histories and working towards honoring and inviting the truth. So first, I will pass it over to AMSSA. Our presenter today is Sabrina Dumitra, who is the Senior Director of Programs. So over to you.
Thanks, Bahar, and hello, everyone. Great to have so many folks joining us today. And I do hope that my voice holds for this presentation today. Just wanting to acknowledge the land as well on the next slide before we really get started. On the next slide again, sorry. And so as a provincial umbrella association, AMSSA acknowledges that BC is on the unceded homelands of First Nations who have stewarded this land since time immemorial. We recognize the privilege that we have as settlers on this land and acknowledge that AMSSA's operations are located on the unceded traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. As an organization, AMSSA is committed to creating a safe space for Indigenous voices. And for me personally, acknowledging the land is another act of resistance and acknowledging the history and Indigenous peoples who have been here since time immemorial. And so on the next slide is really wanting to get into this resource network and kind of share a little bit about this. And so this is the indirect supports connected to the BC Safe Haven project. And so that is something that is a direct service support currently for organizations, for clients. So the province of BC through the Ministry of Municipal Affairs has funded direct service delivery across the province through direct Safe Haven service delivery. And so for those service providers, and to support the program, the province has also funded indirect supports. And so these indirect supports started during the summer months. And AMSSA, as part of the proposal phase, AMSSA was asked and to submit the proposal on behalf of a collective of organizations. And so this is work that AMSSA is doing collaboratively with many different organizations, and some of them you'll be hearing from today, and others I'll be sharing and talking about shortly. But we really wanted to do this together as a collaborative so that we're supporting each other, that we're amplifying the voices and not duplicating services in any means. So this is really the basis and the foundation of where this support and this network. And so because this is many different organizations, we've put it together in a name called the BC Safe Haven Resource Network. And at the bottom of the slide, you see our little logo captured in the corner. And so you'll be seeing and identifying this logo in many different formats that are where you're getting communications from different organizations that are going to be part of this network as a way to identify that this is all part of the same Safe Haven resource indirect services. And so these indirect supports are really around building the capacity and providing some coordination support to these to Safe Haven funded organizations. You know, it's really to support, and the idea of the Safe Haven program is really to support the settlement integration of refugee claimants. And so it's dedicated supports for this population. And so we're looking to enhance with these indirect supports to enhance the program delivery effectively by supporting the coordination of partners for organizing meetings, producing resources, and really wanting to stay in connection with safe haven providers to hear what's happening on the ground. And so if we move on to the next slide, you'll see a little bit more about the different partners that we have and the overall collective partnership. And so as we see the BC Safe Haven Resource Network as one network, there are many different pillars within the network. And these pillars kind of stem from the way how the province had put up the funding call for proposal. Um, and so there were four pillars, and we've been asked to lead all of them. And so the first one is really around building services and sector support and capacity and then the website. And so this is one that you'll hear about today a lot. And so this is one that AMSSA is leading in partnership with ISS of BC's BC Refugee Hub and the multi-agency partnership MAP BC. And so Bahar and Katya will later also be talking a little bit about some of those different activities that are going to be coming out of that. And I'll be sharing what AMSSA is going to be doing as part of that shortly. The next pillar of the work that we're doing is really around mental health services and support and coordination. And so for this stream, the partners are really again ISSBC's BC Refugee Hub, the multi-agency partnership MAP, and the Vancouver Association for Survivors of Torture VAST. And so Bahar and Katya will talk briefly about some of these activities, but we'll share a little bit more in detail because there's quite a bit that's coming out of the stream as well that we think is of great importance and of usefulness to everyone. The third pillar is really focusing on English language training and curriculum coordination. So this pillar is being conducted in partnership with ISS BC, with their language department, not the BC Refugee Hub, Diversity, Community Resources Society and out of Surrey, and the Intercultural Association of Greater Victoria, ICA, in Victoria. So the idea of this language training curriculum pillar is really around supporting the organizations providing that language support to see, is there specific curricula that is needed that is focusing on refugee claimants? Are there specific areas of support? And so we're going to be conducting an environmental scan shortly, and that's going to be sent out. And then hopefully in the next week or two, to safe haven providers to really start to see what type of curricula are you using currently, because the direct services was funded and started in April, and now we're in October. So there has been months where services have been provided. And so we really want to see how is that going? What are folks using? Is there a need to create some specialized curricula in some areas? There's ideas in terms of what some of those areas could be, but we really want this environmental scan to support us in leading that direction. And then the fourth pillar, which hasn't even started yet. And so this pillar is going to be starting January 1st of 2025. But I just wanted to share really briefly about this pillar, but we will be sharing more about this once it's actually started. But this is going to be through AMSSA's charitable arm, ACES. And the pillar is going to be with United and our partners, United Way of BC. And the idea of the support gathering is really to look to gather donation support from the public, to really look at volunteering, housing supports. And so we'll be sharing more about this one shortly. But I'll go into each of them a little bit more in detail now, just to really share. So the capacity building services and sector support. So the overall purpose of this is really to support the organizational capacity. We want to make sure that connections are being built, collaboration is happening. We're looking to create, identify, topics and areas of interest and provide key resources. And a lot of these resources will be coming out from the BC Refugee Hub, but they're all part of this general partnership. We're looking to disseminate timely and relevant information, and really look to expand the sector's knowledge in terms of supporting refugee claimants. And so as part of this, AMSSA's particular role that we're leading is we're going to be looking to facilitate collaboration between the partners. We're convening a working group. So if your organization is a safe haven funded organization, you're welcome to join that working group. And I'll get Kieran Davis, who is the program specialist working day to day on this project, to put their email address in the chat so that you can reach out directly to them. And we're also looking to create humanitarian response planning and sharing monitoring evaluation framework. And I'll go into these two really shortly. But if we go to the next slide, just wanted to talk a little bit about this, some of the working groups and some of the subgroups that exist. And so you'll see that Kieran just put their contact information in the chat as well, so you can reach out to them. But the idea is that this is really a space open to all safe haven providers. We meet quarterly. There's opportunities for collaboration and sharing. We talk about what's working, what's not. We provide feedback to the ministry. If there's program questions, we kind of talk about what some of the different challenges or some folks share. This is something that we've engaged in, and don't, kind of wanting to hear from other service providers. How do you kind of address this problem? And we also have some subgroups. And so these subgroups, they meet on more an ad hoc basis, and we're just in the process of starting these subgroups. And so one of the subgroups is going to be focusing on mental health, looking at the needs of clients and of the staff providing the services, really wanting to share and find out what are some of the successful practices and partnerships that exist, and where are some emerging challenges and concerns still. The other one is really focusing on housing, and we know that housing is a challenge for so many folks across the province. But we know that refugee claimants are particularly impacted when it comes to housing, and so we want to find out, like, what are the ongoing pressures? Is it the same in each region? Are there differences? Are there different pressures when it comes to emergencies, short term and long term? And these pressures can consistently change. We also know that it's an ongoing, evolving situation in housing. We want to talk about partnerships and best practices, and discuss challenges and those emerging concerns, and how do we look to address them. And so please do let Kieran know, and when you reach out to them, if there's any parts of these working groups that you're interested in joining. So some of those next activities that are part of that capacity building that are currently just starting are new, and I really just wanted to kind of share some brief high-level information about them. And so the first one is really around that humanitarian movement planning. So we have seen that there, that with refugee claimants, that it's hard to predict that the numbers, the arrivals, the frequency, and so it's very much for service providers. You're in a response mode consistently, and so we want to be looking and talking and with service providers around, how do we continuously look to provide these supports and plan, but how do we look to kind of provide these if there is higher numbers arriving at a certain time? How do we look to provide those supports? We look at kind of some of the global trends that are happening, and just the increased number of displaced peoples in general, and recognizing as well that Canada is a choice destination for many who are forced, and looking for protection. And so wanting to, look and make sure that we are providing some of those supports. And so we're looking at it from an organizational perspective, knowing all of these things. How are we as organizations going to be looking to provide these different supports, when we know that the numbers and the arrival patterns are very unpredictable? And so we're currently looking and conducting an internal environmental scan, and we'll be reaching out and doing some consultations with safe haven providers, and then really working with them to kind of build some planning. We're looking to hear from and create some guiding principles. So it's really that environmental scan. We're also providing some of this feedback and discussing it with representatives from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, from the province, looking at discussing with safe haven providers, and then really wanting to find and look at, let's create some guiding principles that we can utilize as a sector moving forward. And we also want to look at the monitoring and evaluation framework. We recognize that this is a new program, the Safe Haven program, and we want to build upon the successes, challenges, um, that organizations have seen so far. And so we want to also provide and create collaboratively with everyone a framework that kind of helps us to compare, helps us to evaluate the work that we're doing, recognizing that services are very unique for this population, and that what one refugee claimant in one region requires maybe not the same what another refugee claimant in another region requires. So really, but wanting to look and discuss how can we develop clear metrics, support, and challenges, and kind of be able to share that, so that um we can talk and evaluate um, this program. And so we're really looking to create a framework that empowers the providers to clearly communicate and demonstrate what they're seeing and what they've experienced, to develop a method for identifying areas for program improvement, for tracking successes of interventions, to build that organizational capacity, and then also to be able to improve understanding between providers in the province when it comes to the work that they do on the ground. And so for this one, we're again looking at doing environmental scan. Internally, we're connecting with the province as well to discuss this. We're going to be connecting with safe haven providers through the working group to discuss and find out, like, how are people currently looking at evaluating this project? What are organizations using to really look to co-create and pilot an evaluation method? So that's the overall plan that we're undertaking as part of this. And I think it'll really help to enrich the program overall. So that was really under those capacity building pillars. And so looking at the mental health coordination and support on the next slide, this stream is, as I mentioned, in partnership with AMSSA, BC Refugee Hub, MAP BC, and the Vancouver Association for Survivors of Torture, BAST. And so really the purpose of this overall stream is to build connection, collaboration between organizations, strengthen their capacity, and to build on and support mental health and well-being of frontline service providers. And Bahar will talk a little bit more on what some of those pieces are going to be. And then here's some really high level pieces. And around that, there's going to be a working group focusing on mental health. And I kind of shared a little bit that there's that subgroup. And so there's going to be toolkits, workshops, and e-learning. Groundwork is happening around a mental health conference. There's a provincial mental health coordinator. And there's going to be mental health focused info sessions. And so Bahar and Katya, they'll get more into those areas shortly. So, but I'm really pleased with the fact, I'm really thankful with the fact that the province recognized that mental health is a need for clients and for staff working in this program, and that they've really dedicated funding and supports for this. And so I think it's going to really enhance the work that we do. And so I really want to make sure that we're also taking and utilizing this, and then taking using this as an opportunity as well to really strengthen the work that we're doing collectively. And so the third pillar is really around that English language training and curriculum development. And so, as I mentioned, it's in collaboration with ISS of BC, the Language Department, Diversity and Intercultural Association of Greater Victoria, ICA. And so really the idea is this partnership is to create guidelines and curricula to support the language training for refugee claimants. So it's really around development of training and workshops to aid instructors in incorporating these resources into their classroom practices. And so the current project phase is an environmental scan to learn about existing curricula, classroom practices, what tools are being used, so that we can look to develop tools and resources to respond to the needs of instructors and the refugee claimant students. So there is a specific working group that on this. And so if you're a safe haven provider and you offer language services and you're looking to be part of this work, please also do connect with Kieran if you're not already part of this. And so just going to that last public support gathering, Heller, and as I mentioned before, this is going to be conducted in partnership with the United Way of BC, and it will be starting January 1st of 2025. So, and United Way of BC has extensive experience in managing donations, volunteering, and public communication. They they were quite instrumental in supporting the sector with welcoming Q8 visa holders who came under the Canada to Ukraine authorization for emergency travel, where they really stepped up and so they have a lot of experience. And this is going to be a continuation of some of these supports focusing on refugee claimants. And so the idea, and we'll really share more about this, and once that project starts and wanting to connect people and the sector to this work as well. But the idea is really to support developing welcoming communities, enhance the effectiveness of volunteer offers and donations, really support with that collaboration and communication, and to build supports for refugee claimants through communication and outreach. And so United Way of BC, they have through as part of their overall infrastructure, they have a centralized intake and distribution system, and they're going to be leveraging their existing expertise and looking to identify what are the needs in terms of donations, and looking to connect with their corporate partners to source some of those donation needs. Um, and so we will connect with all of you once this project starts, so that we can really look to support and kind of get this next phase of the project underway. And so, and so just in closing, just wanting to say, a thank you to also, and encourage you to also connect with AMSSA. We post on LinkedIn, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter, and to connect with our website as well, where we will be posting many of these resources as well. So thank you so
So I'd
much.
like to introduce Katia Avalos, who's the Community Engagement Director at the Multi-Agency Partnership of British Columbia, or MAP, or MAP BC. So Katia, I will pass it over to you.
Thanks, Bahar. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's so great to see a lot of familiar names and faces attending today, a lot of our regular MAP attendees as well, and some new folks that are probably not familiar with MAP. And so, if you're not, I know that a lot of you are from regions outside of Metro Vancouver. So, we're a network, we're not an agency, we're not a registered charity. It's just me, I'm the only contracted employee. So, we're really a network of all of the agencies and the community members that support refugee claimants. We are now a collaboration of over 60 nonprofits, government, and non-government organizations. And our members include settlement agencies, emergency and transitional housing providers, legal aid and other legal service providers, counseling and mental health providers, faith-based organizations and churches, libraries, settlement workers in school, education service providers, and food banks, to mention a few. So we're a very diverse bunch. And we have government partners, including IRCC, CBSA, IRB, MUNI, and MSDPR. Okay, yeah, so that's MAP in a snapshot. So a lot of the times it's like people come to MAP and they're like, like who is MAP? And the answer really is MAP is the collective. We are all part of MAP as a network and a community of supporters for refugee claimants. Next slide, please, Bahar. Thank you. And again, if you're familiar with MAP, you already know some of this, but if you're new, MAP does a lot of different things within the community. We're very flexible in the way that we can approach things, and that comes with the fact that we are a collective and a network rather than an agency. And so a lot of what we do is foster collaboration and partnership building within the service providers that are part of our network. We can identify as a collective common issues and work towards solutions. So we are a bit of a connector between service providers. That's really one of the big benefits. If your staff are encountering issues and service gaps and, they don't know where to refer clients to, you can reach out to MAP, and more likely if we're not already aware of a service provider that might be able to help, somebody in our network is. And so that's kind of one of the powerful things about the network. We also do a lot of information sharing. I send out weekly news bulletins that include programs for clients, as well as capacity building opportunities for staff. And aside from those weekly bulletins, we also send out any kind of government update that's relevant to the refugee claimant sector, as well as invitations to our monthly meetings and to any virtual presentations or events that MAP programs in partnership with other service providers. Also, what we can do is we have a communication line with IRCC that's bypassing the web form and the call center, which is very difficult to access. So if your clients are having a specific issue with their application, we can connect with our contact with IRCC, and hopefully they can either look at the file, give us information, or refer us to the action that can be taken to support the client. So that's a very huge benefit that I think a lot of people are not aware of and that you can access through MAP. And because we have realized that there's a lot, with the new Safe Haven program, there's so many new service providers across the province. That expertise on refugee claimant services kind of used to be held within a few agencies. And so now we are hoping to spread that expertise around as much as possible to other service providers in other regions. And so we are really looking at capacity building sessions and presentations on topics relevant to refugee claimants. The information of what is needed in terms of presentations and capacity building really comes from you. So we've integrated our monthly MAP meetings, a bit of a feedback mechanism to touch base with the attendees and see where are you struggling, where are the needs, are you seeing any issues or any trends that might be something that we can address together. And so that's kind of where we get the information to plan the topics and presentations that we do in partnership with our other service providers in our network. And another thing that we do is we act as a community partner for different research projects and to support research that comes up within the community. So either that is, big research projects or small community-based projects where MAP can either act as a community partner or support funding applications. And of course, one thing that's very important to us is to amplify the voices of refugee claimants. And we've kind of narrowed that down to using the World Refugee Day event that we host every year as a way to amplify the voices of people with lived experience and refugee claimants who have a lot of information to share. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so just a very brief snapshot of some successful MAP collaborations in the past. In 2018, MAP organized the BC Refugee Housing Forum, which led to a report on recommendations for refugee housing, and also eventually led to the creation of BC Charms, which is the BC Refugee Claimant Housing Referral System. That's a database for refugee claimants for transitional housing providers that work with refugee claimants to assess to assess clients and try and match them with vacancies that open up at the different transitional housing providers. So that is one of it's owned by Mosaic, but that's an example of something that came out of a MAP collaboration. Another example is the MAP BC Immigration Holding Center Support Program, the BCIHC Support Program. And that is a collaboration between 4 service providers, HICS, Mosaic. We have options and diversity, currently having support workers that go into the Immigration Holding Center in Surrey to provide services to those people that are in detention. And we have also acted, like I mentioned earlier, in several research projects as community partner. Examples are Racism in Detention Research Project led by the UBC School of Law, the UBC Immigrant Women's Access to Sexual and Reproductive Health in BC Research Project, and the City in Color Cooperative's Growing Roots exhibition, which is a refugee-centric housing exhibition in Metro Vancouver. And of course, our yearly World Refugee Day events. Next slide, please. And so really, what are the MAP supports that are out there for safe haven providers? Again, we're really kind of trying to focus on capacity building to address the knowledge gaps that are out there in the sector right now, with different frontline workers joining programs that are, not necessarily what they're aware of in terms of refugee claimants. There's such a very specialized demographic to work with that if you're not familiar with the ins and outs of the refugee claim process or the restrictions around eligibility, it can be very confusing, even if you work with newcomers before. And so the webinars that are in toolkits and fact sheets that are being developed by BC Refugee Hub, MAP is supporting with content creation and identifying expert speakers that can help provide the information that then is delivered through BC Refugee Hub. And we also, again, do a lot of information sharing, government updates, workshops and programs for clients, and opportunities for learning for staff. And these are usually free learning opportunities. It's not something that's, that your agency would have to pay for. They're out there, trainings that are available, for example, around domestic violence or gender-based discrimination, those kinds of, trauma-informed practices. So a lot of things that are useful for staff, and that's available for free, usually in self-paced courses in different places. So we kind of put that all together into the weekly bulletin, so that if you're not on our mailing list, please let me know to sign up so that you can get those that information. And so again, the meetings and community connections and presentations on refugee claimant topics. Before joining MAP, I was a settlement worker for refugee claimants for 5 years. And so there's a lot of, questions that frontline staff encounter that they're like, where can I go to have this answered? So I want people to see MAP as a resource. If not the source of the answer, then a connector to somebody who can answer your question. And again, these meetings and presentations are available upon request to safe haven providers. So if your team, is experiencing issues or has a question around, eligibility for services, when are clients able to apply for a work permit, when are clients available or able to apply for MSP, child tax services, all those things that your staff might be, or that frontline staff might be encountering, you're able to come to MAP and request, okay, we need a presentation for this. And if I can do it myself, wonderful. I'm happy to meet with your staff and do a personalized presentation based on what your staff's needs are. And if not me, then I can connect you to somebody else who can. So I am available upon request for any presentations or speaking engagements. And again, one of the things that we're doing because through this partnership, we are able to increase our reach beyond Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley. We're looking to connect with service providers in the different regions and seeing what they're seeing in their specific regions, what the needs are, what resources they have, to try and integrate them into the MAP network, hopefully in a way that's beneficial to everyone. One of the possibilities is that we might be able to make our monthly meetings hybrid in some occasions, have folks from other regions join us. But we're still kind of assessing how the best way to integrate folks from other regions. However, I am, like I said, available at any time to anybody. Doesn't have to be somebody who's already part of the network. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. We're reaching out to the different service providers, to the different hubs, and trying to connect with the spokes to see, what are the specific needs or barriers that your staff is encountering when they're helping refugee claimants across BC. And one of the most exciting things on as far as I'm aware, is that we are developing quarterly mental health focused presentations for frontline staff. We tend to speak a lot about mental health and the trauma that our clients experience, but we don't often talk about the mental health of the staff that has to deal with those situations. You a lot of the time you absorb the anxiety and the stress that your clients come to your office with every day, right? And we also can't assume that people's mental health is a-okay at any point in time. People go on stress leave, people get burnt out, there's vicarious trauma is a thing. And so how can we equip staff with tools to help manage their own mental health at work, knowing that we're working with a very very in terms of mental health, a very stressed population. And so that's kind of in the works right now, and we're hoping that it's going to be the first presentation is going to be done by late November. So stay tuned for that. And that is about it for MAP's current supports for safe haven providers. However, like I said, we're happy to work with anybody, not just safe haven providers. But however, this specific presentations are meant for to increase the capacity of safe haven providers. I think that's the next slide is the last one.
Yep.
Yep. So that's our website, mapbc.org. If you Google mapbc, you're gonna get about 20 pages worth of maps of the province. So just go mapbc.org. And then my email is info@mapbc.org. And my phone number is 604-761-2465. I'm happy to answer phone calls at any time. So please don't be shy and reach out to me if you want to learn more.
So I'll be presenting about the BC Refugee Hub, and I'll have our partners from VAST join us for a couple of slides as well. So my name is Bahar Taheri, and I'm not even sure if I introduced myself at the very beginning. I'm the project consultant with the BC Refugee Hub, and the BC Refugee Hub is a program of ISS of BC. In November of 2015, with the arrival of Syrian refugee families, and to assist and empower individuals and refugee serving organizations, and to help in the resettlement process, ISS of BC, in partnership with the province of British Columbia, created this online resource hub called the BC Refugee Hub. The BC Refugee Hub provides users information about refugees that are arriving to BC, the latest reports, publications, statistics, fact sheets. There's a resource center with a variety of information from service providers. And we also highlight stories of refugees and refugee claimants with lived experience through short stories and videos and storytelling. We also provide capacity building online and in-person workshops and webinars, training sessions on a variety of topics related to refugees and refugee claimants. Everything is still on our website, even from past years, so that if you missed it or if you have new staff, then you can use that as onboarding and training tool. Currently, our focus is on supporting refugee claimants through a resource center that has publications, statistics, and fact sheets. We also promote the services and programs of various organizations across British Columbia in our weekly updates on the website and on our monthly e-newsletter. So what we have for this fiscal year, there's a lot planned. We've already launched the survey for the BC Refugee Hub to gather insights from you and everyone who is using the hub. We've also launched the service directory for BC Safe Haven service providers, and we'll be updating that quarterly to ensure that it remains current and relevant with current contact information for each of the BC Safe Haven service providers in British Columbia. And I think that'll answer a lot of the service directory will answer a lot of the questions that are coming up about what are the services and who's providing them and how to contact them. We have 4 training webinars scheduled for this fiscal year. We also have 2 statistical fact sheets coming up specifically related to refugee claimants. We're also developing an online toolkit focusing on the refugee claim process. And Katia will be, she's already been helping with topic expertise because she is the topic expert. So we are going to develop that online toolkit, and that'll hopefully also support with training and providing information to service providers on how the process works. We're excited to also introduce a mental health toolkit along with workshops and e-learning opportunities. And we will be working in partnership with VAST, who will be creating all the content for that. And these will be conducted in person in various regions across British Columbia. So we're going to be actually doing 5 in-person workshops in Vancouver Island, Metro Vancouver, Fraser Valley, the interior, and the North regions. And we will be promoting all of that on our e-newsletter so that organizations can sign up for that. And lastly, we're also working on a mental health environmental scan to better understand the needs of refugee claimants in British Columbia. And this will inform activities for the next fiscal year with our BC Refugee Hub Mental Health Forum that we will be holding next year. So that we will be having interviews with service providers. We're going to be doing focus groups with refugee claimants themselves. And we will also be sending out a general survey that everyone can contribute to and provide feedback on what is happening and what the needs of refugee claimants are. We're working directly with a registered clinical counselor who has a lot of experience working with refugee claimants. Yeah, we have the topic expertise there, which will be really amazing. And lastly, refugee claimant service mapping. We will be posting that on the BC Refugee Hub, and we will be updating that regularly. And we'll have organizations and their contact information in a map so that you can see where you can easily refer folks to if there are refugee claimant specific services in your region. And so the BC Safe Haven Service Directory, we've already posted this on the BC Refugee Hub. We've also promoted it a couple times on our e-newsletter. And so in this, there's information about BC Safe Haven programs and who the service providers are in each region. It also highlights who the lead organization is and who the subcontractors are. And that's also called the hub and spoke model. So all of that is highlighted in this directory. There's also a chart that shows you which organizations have been funded to provide what services exactly. So it's a really great resource, and we developed this directly with the province. So just to make sure all the information is there and presented the way it's supposed to be. We also have contact information for direct referrals so that you're not having to call the main switchboard of an organization, and rather you can actually see who to contact directly for the BC Safe Haven program. Yeah, so hopefully that really streamlines the referral process for everybody. We will be updating this, like I mentioned, quarterly. So if you are checking out the directory and information for one of your staff has updated, or you hired on another person or anything like that, please feel free to email me and I can update the information for the referrals that your organization has in the document. We also have weekly and monthly activities. So weekly updates with new programs, services, resources, and bulletins. We post this right on the BC Refugee Hub on the front page. We also have monthly e-newsletters that highlights BC Refugee Hub's activities, maps, and our partners with AMSSA, VAST, and other network partners. And we also highlight BC Safe Haven funded organizations and their programming in the newsletters as well. We'll also be collaborating regularly with our partners with MAP. As Katya mentioned, we're working closely with Katya and with AMSSA. And then we'll also be delivering the trainings with VAS. So we do meet regularly and collaborate regularly. And we also, the BC Refugee Hub joins the partner working group meetings as well. So that I can hear about what's going on with housing, mental health, what the needs are in terms of creating new training materials and resources. If you have any workshops, events, services to promote on the BC Refugee Hub and on our e-newsletter list, you can also send that to refugeehub@issbc.org. So the website will also be revamping soon. We did send out the survey, and in the survey, we had a lot of questions around the website, what you'd like to see, what's working, what you'd like to see changed. So thank you to everyone who did provide your feedback. There's going to be new branding and just an overall look and hopefully better navigation. So we will be unveiling that new look and navigation in the new year. But still, if you didn't get a chance to fill out the survey, you can still send me feedback anytime at refugeehub@issbc.org. Feel free to be honest, because the website was updated about 5 years ago. So yeah, so we know it needs some updates, and I'm happy to hear it. Okay, and then this is the Provincial Refugee Mental Health Information and Support Line. So I'm just going to invite Frank to feel free to unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about the VAST's Provincial Mental Health Information and Support Line, if you are here.
Sure.
Oh, you are. Great.
Yeah. Thanks, Bahar. Thanks, Sabrina. Thanks, Kieran and Katya. Great information, and been following along all of the questions and comments in the chat as well. So yeah, VAST has been around in BC for the last 4 decades, supporting when it comes to mental health and the needs of individuals who have survived violence, trauma, torture, as part of their migration journey coming here to BC, and many of whom who continue to face different kinds of violence once they arrive here, whether it's in dealing with discrimination and racism in terms of housing, employment, or getting caught up with law enforcement and being reported to CBSA, ending up in detention. We know that there's a lot of violence that ends up happening here as well for folks. So what we do as an agency is we provide no cost individual clinical support to people who want to meet with an individual practitioner. And then we also provide about 11 different support groups on a weekly basis. So anybody who comes into VAST as a client would have access to those things. Now, for all of the 100 people who are on this call, you're not going to be coming to us as a client necessarily. but you may be dealing with people in your agency, whether it's a university, a school, a neighborhood house, whatever, who have faced significant violence as part of their journey in getting here. And that can be hard. It can be complicated. It can be complex. And there can be questions that come up. What does this mean? How do I understand this? How do I deal with this? How do I deal with a person from this cultural background who's sitting next to a person of this cultural background and things are getting confusing, or this is presenting as this person's really angry, but I think there might be something else going on, or I'm trying to connect with this family, but they're super disaffected and not engaging with us, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. We've got a phone line you can call, leave a voicemail, and the appropriate person from our team will get back to you. So just to be clear, it's not a crisis line. Do not call this line if you need immediate support for a client. There's a great crisis line that Success runs that we can recommend, and of course United Way's got a line that's supported on anyone who's dealing with hate or hatred. But this is the line that you'd call if you're struggling with a case that you're working on, you're struggling with a client file that you're dealing with, or you're struggling maybe even with a coworker who's getting affected by something, or you're struggling with a group and some dynamics in the group, and you've got questions coming up. Reach out to us, and someone from our team will call you back, either myself, our social worker, Zavoy, our advocacy and community engagement coordinator, Sarah, who I believe is on the call now as well, and also is the MAP co-chair with Katya, or someone from our clinical team if it's more of a clinical focused question. Yeah, I can keep going on, Bahar, if there's time to fill, but I think that's enough for now. I put some information in the chat as well.
Thanks, Frank, for joining us. And yeah, if you have any other specific questions for VAST and referral processes, please feel free to email VAST using the email address that Frank just posted in the chat box, just in the interest of time. Thank you. So that concludes our presentation, Frank and I. So I just want to thank everybody for, and the next year will mark 10 years of the BC Refugee Hub, which is kind of mind-boggling for me. And I've been with the BC Refugee Hub right from the beginning. Just like Katya, I am the only person back here doing all of this. So it's a one-person show. And thank you all who are joining today for your continued work with refugees and refugee claimants. We also have to thank the province of British Columbia, who's been funding the BC Refugee Hub since the very beginning. And we're really excited to be collaborating with MAP, AMSSA, VAST, and all of the other partners who are part of the resource network.